Kim Dae-ho pushed his mop across the shiny floor of the diplomatic station. The cleaning solution smelled like fake flowers, but he had smelled worse things in his life. Much worse. He moved quietly through the long hallways, the way he had learned to move many years ago when being quiet meant staying alive. The station was called New Horizon. It floated in space between Earth and the Galactic Council's main worlds. Humans had only been part of the Council for 5 years now. Most aliens still thought of humans as the new kids who barely knew how to travel between stars. Dae-ho did not mind this. He had been cleaning floors on the station for 2 years. The work was simple and peaceful. He liked peaceful. At 45 years old, he had earned some peace. Today was different, though. The main meeting room buzzed with nervous energy. Ambassador Park Bo-ram sat at the big table, surrounded by papers and tablet computers. Her assistant, Lee Tae-min, kept checking his translator device every few minutes. Across from them sat High Arbiter Vexerol. The alien looked like a walking crystal formation, with blue light pulsing through its body. When it spoke, the words came out like wind chimes in a storm. "All member species must complete the census," Vexerol said. "Every individual must report their termination count. This data will create our peace database." Bo-ram frowned. "Termination count?" "The number of sentient beings each person has killed during their lifetime," Tae-min translated, reading from his device. "They want to know how many people each human has killed." Bo-ram laughed nervously. "That's unusual. Most humans have never killed anyone. We're not really a warrior species." Vexerol's crystal body flashed brighter. "Impossible. All species have warriors. All individuals have some termination experience. Even our most peaceful races average 20 to 30 kills per adult." 20 to 30? Bo-ram's voice went higher. "Our soldiers might have those numbers. But regular people? Most humans go their whole lives without killing anyone." The alien made a sound like breaking glass. Other aliens around the room, tall, thin creatures with too many arms, small, furry beings with big eyes, and some that looked like walking plants, all turned to stare at the humans. "You jest," said one of the 6-armed Kethmori. "How does your species survive without culling the weak? Without territorial disputes? Without resource competition eliminations?" Tae-min looked confused as his translator worked. "I think they're asking about natural selection through combat and fighting over food and land." "We use laws and courts for disputes," Bo-ram explained, "and we share resources through trade and government programs." The room fell silent. Then several aliens began making noises that the translator labeled as expressions of disbelief and concern. Dae-ho had stopped mopping. He stood in the corner, listening. He had heard conversations like this before, long ago, in places where different groups of people met for the first time. Usually someone was lying or someone was about to die. "Show us your census forms," Vexerol demanded. "We must see proof of this claim." Bo-ram pulled out a stack of papers. "We brought some sample forms from our crew and staff." She began reading names and numbers. "Ambassador Park Bo-ram, termination count 0. Diplomat Tae-min, termination count 0. Dr. Sarah Kim, termination count 0. With each 0, the aliens became more agitated. Their various sounds of distress filled the room. "This is not possible," Vexerol said, its light pulsing angry red. "Your species could not have reached space travel with such low combat experience. You could not have survived natural selection. You could not have developed the necessary aggressive traits for technological advancement." Dae-ho knew he should leave. He should go back to his cleaning supply closet and pretend he had not heard any of this. But something about the aliens' disbelief bothered him. They thought humans were weak. "Perhaps," suggested a plant-like alien, "the humans are confused about the definition. Maybe they do not understand what termination means. Or maybe," added a Kethmori warrior, "they are too ashamed to admit their true numbers." Bo-ram's face turned red. "We understand perfectly, and we're not ashamed. We're proud that our species has moved beyond constant violence." "Impossible," Vexerol repeated. "No species reaches the stars without proving their strength through eliminations. Show us your warriors' numbers." "Our military personnel aren't on this station," Bo-ram said. "This is a diplomatic mission." "Then show us any adult human," the crystal alien demanded. "Anyone over the age of maturity. They will have some termination count. All eyes in the room turned to look around. The only other human present was Daeho, still holding his mop in the corner. "You there?" Vexral pointed a crystal finger at him. "Human cleaning unit. State your termination count." Daeho felt all the alien eyes on him. Boram looked embarrassed. "I'm sorry, Daeho. This is silly, but could you just tell them your number so we can move on?" Daeho set down his mop. He walked slowly to the table. His movements were careful and precise, like someone who had learned to be very aware of his surroundings. "They want to know how many people I have killed?" he asked quietly. "Yes," Boram said. "Just tell them 0 like the rest of us, and we can explain that humans don't—" "I need a paper," Daeho interrupted. Taemin handed him a census form. Daeho looked at it for a long moment. His weathered hands held the pen steady, the way they had once held other things. The room watched as he wrote carefully on the form. When he finished, he handed it back to Boram. She glanced at the paper, and her face went completely white. Her hands began to shake. "What does it say?" asked Vexral. Boram stared at Daeho, then at the paper, then back at Daeho. There must be a mistake, a translation error." "What number did the human write?" demanded the Kethmori warrior. Boram's voice was barely a whisper. 1,247. The room exploded with noise. Aliens made sounds of shock, disbelief, and something that might have been fear. Vexral's crystal body flashed between colors so fast it hurt to look at. Daeho stood quietly in the middle of the chaos, his face showing nothing. He had learned long ago not to show his feelings when people were upset about things he had done to survive. "Impossible!" Vexral finally shouted over the noise. "No single individual has a count that high. Our greatest Kethmori war leaders peak at 600. Our most experienced Zephyrian hive warriors reach 800 at most." "Check the form," demanded another alien. He must have misunderstood the question. Boram looked at Daeho with new eyes. The quiet janitor who had cleaned floors for 2 years suddenly seemed like a stranger. "Daeho," she said carefully. "Did you understand what they were asking?" Daeho nodded once. "Yes. They want to know my kill count." "And you wrote down 1,247? "Yes. That's not possible. You're a janitor." For the first time, Daeho's face showed emotion. It was not sadness or anger. It was something much older and deeper. "I am a janitor now," he said simply. The room fell completely silent. Every alien stared at the small, quiet human who cleaned. Their floors and apparently had a higher body count than any warrior in the known galaxy. Vexral's voice was very quiet when it spoke again. "What were you before you were a janitor?" Daeho picked up his mop and bucket. "Before? I was just trying to stay alive." He walked toward the door, leaving behind a room full of aliens who suddenly realized they might not understand humans as well as they thought they did. Ambassador Park Boram could not sleep that night. She kept looking at the census form on her desk. The number 1,247 was written in neat, careful handwriting. She had checked it 5 times. There was no mistake. At 6 in the morning, she called Daeho to her office. He arrived exactly on time, carrying his cleaning supplies. He wore the same blue uniform he always wore. His face was calm and empty, like he was waiting for something bad to happen. "Sit down, please," Boram said. Daeho sat in the chair across from her desk. He kept his back straight and his hands on his knees, very still, very controlled. "About yesterday," Boram began. "The number you wrote down. I think there might have been some confusion." "No confusion," Daeho said quietly. "But you wrote that. You killed over 1,000 people. That's not possible. You're a janitor. You clean floors." "I clean floors now." Boram felt frustrated. "What did you do before you cleaned floors?" "Many things." "What kind of things?" Daeho was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "Things that needed to be done." Boram realized she was not going to get answers this way. "I'm calling Dr. Jin Hye-won. She's a doctor who studies how different species think. Maybe she can help us figure out what happened." An hour later, Dr. Jin Hye-won sat in the same chair where Daeho had been. She was a small woman with kind eyes and gray hair. His psychological profile is very interesting, she told Bo-Ram. On the surface, he seems like a normal, quiet man. But underneath, there are signs of something else. Signs of what? Trauma. Old trauma that has been carefully managed and controlled. He has the mental patterns of someone who has seen combat. Lots of combat. But he's just a janitor. Ambassador, where did Dae-ho come from? What's his background? Bo-Ram realized she did not know. I never asked. He applied for the job, had good references, and did good work. I didn't think to check his history. Dr. Jin looked surprised. You hired someone to work on a diplomatic station without checking their background? He cleans floors. He's not handling sensitive information. Maybe you should check now. Bo-Ram called Captain Nam Suho, the head of station security. He was a big, serious man who had served in Earth's military before coming to the diplomatic corps. I need a background check on Kim Dae-ho, she told him. The janitor? Captain Nam sounded surprised. Is there a problem? Just check, please. 20 minutes later, Captain Nam knocked on her office door. His face was very serious. Ambassador, we need to talk privately. Dr. Jin excused herself. Captain, Nam sat down and opened a tablet computer. Kim Dae-ho, age 45, he read. Born in North Korea. Parents died when he was 8. Sent to a labor camp for children. Bo-Ram felt her stomach drop. A labor camp? He escaped when he was 15. Killed 3 guards on the way out. 3 guards at 15 years old? Captain Nam kept reading. Survived in the mountains for 2 years, living like an animal. Joined a group of other escapees. They became guerrilla fighters along the DMZ. The DMZ? The border between North and South Korea. Very dangerous place. Full of soldiers, mines, and people trying to escape. His group fought border guards, military, patrols, and other gangs for territory and supplies. Bo-Ram sat down heavily. How long was he there? 12 years, from age 17 to 29. During that time, his group fought in what the records call constant low-level warfare. They killed soldiers, smugglers, other gang members, and anyone who threatened their territory. Then what happened? He made it to South Korea. Spent 3 years in refugee camps and integration programs, learned to read and write properly, got basic education. Then he joined the Colonial Defense Force. Our military? Yes. He served for 8 years on frontier worlds, mining colonies, research stations, places where pirates and raiders were common problems. His unit specialized in defending isolated settlements. Captain Nam turned the tablet screen toward Bo-Ram. Here's his service record. 43 confirmed kills during military service. All documented and legal under Colonial Defense Force rules. Bo-Ram stared at the numbers. 43. Plus however many during his guerrilla years. Gets you pretty close to 1247, I would guess. But he's so quiet. So normal. Captain Nam closed his tablet. Ambassador, some of the toughest soldiers I ever served with were the quiet ones. The ones who had learned that violence was just another tool for survival, not something to be proud of or excited about. Why didn't this show up in his background check when I hired him? Because you only requested a criminal background check. He has no criminal record. Everything he did was either legal under military law or happened outside of South Korean jurisdiction. Plus, he's been clean for 6 years since leaving the military. No problems, no incidents. Bo-Ram felt like the room was spinning. So the aliens were right? Humans really are a warrior species? Not exactly. Captain Nam thought for a moment. Most humans never fight anyone, but humans like Dae-ho, they're survivors. They lived through situations that would kill most people. They learned to fight because the alternative was death. Is he dangerous now? To us? No. He chose to leave that life behind. But if someone threatened this station, threatened the people he's chosen to protect, Captain Nam shrugged. I would not want to be that someone. Just then, Dr. Jin knocked and came back in. With her was an elderly man with white hair and wrinkled hands. This is Elder Yu Min-sik, Dr. Jin said. He's visiting his granddaughter on the station. When he heard about our discussion, he asked to speak with you. Elder Yu bowed politely. Ambassador Park, I understand you are confused about young Dae-ho's numbers. Young? He's 45. Elder Yu smiled sadly. To me, he is young. I am 82. I lived through the Korean War, the Resource Wars, the Colony Rebellions. I have seen much fighting. What's your point? My point is that you diplomatic people have forgotten what your grandfathers lived through. You think peace is normal. You think violence is unusual. Elder Yu shook his head. But peace is new. Violence is old. For most of human history, people like Dae-ho were normal. Normal? Normal survivors. My grandfather fought in World War II. My father fought in Korea. I fought in 3 different wars. My son fought in the Resource Wars. Dae-ho fought in the Colony Wars. We all did what we had to do to survive and protect our families. Bo-ram felt overwhelmed. But most humans don't fight. Most humans are peaceful. Most humans today are peaceful because people like Dae-ho fought so they could be peaceful, Elder Yu said quietly. You think he is unusual. But he is not unusual. He is just honest. What do you mean? He counted every person he killed to survive. Most people do not count. They do not remember. They tell themselves it was war, so it does not matter. Or they were following orders, so it was not really them. Or it was self-defense, so it does not count. But Dae-ho counted everyone. He remembered every face. Dr. Jin nodded slowly. That would explain the psychological profile, the careful control, the managed trauma. He's carrying the weight of every life he took. Is that why he became a janitor? Bo-ram asked. Elder Yu smiled. He became a janitor because cleaning things is peaceful work. It makes things better instead of worse. After spending half your life destroying things to survive, you want to spend the other half building things up. Captain Nam's communicator beeped. He answered it, listened for a moment, then looked worried. Ambassador, we have a problem. The Galactic Council's Census Department just sent a message. They say our sample data must be fraudulent. They're sending an investigator to check our numbers. What kind of investigator? An inquisitor. They specialize in finding lies and deception. They think we're trying to hide our real strength by claiming to be peaceful. Bo-ram felt panic rising in her chest. What happens if they decide we're lying? Best case, they declare us an unreliable species and limit our council membership. Worst case, they decide we're a threat trying to hide our true nature and recommend quarantine or elimination. Elder Yu stood up slowly. Where is young Dae-ho now? Probably cleaning the lower decks, Captain Nam said. Why? Because when this investigator arrives, they are going to want to question the human with the impossible numbers. And Dae-ho is not going to enjoy being questioned about the things he had to do to survive. Dr. Jin looked alarmed. You think he might be dangerous if they push too hard? Elder Yu walked toward the door. I think Dae-ho has spent 6 years learning to be peaceful. But if aliens start treating him like a threat, he might remember how to be something else. What should we do? Bo-ram asked. Hope that the investigator is smart enough to understand the difference between a warrior and a survivor, Elder Yu said, and pray that they do not make Dae-ho feel like he needs to survive them. The Galactic Council's investigator arrived 3 days later on a black ship that looked like a weapon. Inquisitor Mordak was 7 feet tall with green scales and yellow eyes that never blinked. He brought 2 assistants and enough scanning equipment to examine a small planet. Ambassador Bo-ram met them at the docking bay. She had not slept well since learning about Dae-ho's past. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the number 1247 written in neat handwriting. Inquisitor Mordak, she said, bowing formally. Welcome to New Horizons Station. Mordak did not bow back. His yellow eyes studied her like she was something dangerous that might attack at any moment. Ambassador Park, his voice sounded like rocks grinding together. I am here to investigate your species' fraudulent census data. Where is the human who claims to have killed over 1,000 beings? He's working. He's just a janitor. No one is just anything. Show me this janitor. Bo-ram led them through the station. She had secretly hoped Dae-ho might have left for the day, but he was in the main corridor, mopping floors with the same quiet efficiency he always showed. That's him, Bo-ram said. Mordak stared at Dae-ho for a long moment. The reptilian alien was huge compared to the small human man. Dae-ho continued cleaning, but Bo-ram noticed he had positioned himself near a maintenance hatch and kept his back to the wall. Human, Mordak called out. Stop what you are doing. Dae-ho set down his mop and turned around. His face was calm, but Bo-Ram could see tension in his shoulders. Yes? You will come with me for questioning. Am I under arrest? Mordak's scales rippled with what his translator marked as amusement. You cannot be arrested. You are not a citizen of any council world. You are simply being examined. For what? To determine if you are lying about your termination count or if your species is naturally deceptive. Deho looked at Bo-Ram, then back at Mordak. And if you decide I am lying, then your species will be marked as untrustworthy. If you are telling the truth. Mordak paused. Then your species is far more dangerous than you pretend to be. They brought Deho to a special examination room that Mordak's team had set up. It was full of machines that hummed and beeped and cast strange lights on the walls. Agent Yoon So-ra watched from the observation room. She had arrived that morning on a fast ship from Earth's intelligence service. Next to her stood Professor Kang Woo-jin, a military historian who had been brought in to explain human warfare to aliens who could not understand it. This is not going to go well, Agent Yoon said quietly. Why? Asked Bo-Ram. Because they're treating him like a criminal instead of a survivor. Men like Deho don't respond well to interrogation. In the examination room, Mordak circled around. Deho, like a predator, studying prey. Deho sat very still in the metal chair, his hands flat on his knees. State your name, Mordak commanded. Kim Deho. State your age. 45 standard years. State your termination count. 1,247. Mordak's machines beeped and flashed. His assistants studied the readings and whispered to each other in their own language. The biometric scanners detect no deception, one assistant reported. Heart rate steady, brain patterns consistent, stress hormones normal. Mordak seemed disappointed. Explain how a maintenance worker killed over 1,000 sentient beings. I was not always a maintenance worker. What were you before? Deho was quiet for a long moment. Many things. That is not an answer. It is the only answer I am giving. Mordak's scales turned darker. You will answer my questions, or I will assume you are lying. Assume what you want. In the observation room, Agent Yoon cursed under her breath. He's going into survival mode. They're pushing him into a corner. What does that mean? Bo-Ram asked. It means he's starting to see them as a threat instead of just annoying aliens. Professor Kang pulled up files on his tablet computer. I've been researching his background, what he lived through. It's hard for us to understand, and we're human. These aliens have no concept of what shaped him. Can you explain it to them? I can try. Professor Kang activated the communication system to the examination room. Inquisitor Mordak, this is Professor Kang. I have historical context. That might help. Mordak looked up at the speakers. Speak. Deho was born during a period of human history when our species was still fighting for survival. Not against external enemies, but against ourselves and our environment. Explain. He grew up in a totalitarian state where children were sent to work camps if their families were considered politically unreliable. He escaped by killing the guards because the alternative was dying slowly from starvation and overwork. Mordak looked at Deho with new interest. You killed to escape imprisonment? I killed to stay alive. How many guards? 3. With what weapons? A broken shovel handle and my hands. The machines beeped more frantically. Mordak's assistants looked worried. You killed 3 armed guards with improvised weapons at age 15? They were not expecting children to fight back. Professor Kang continued over the speakers. After escaping, he lived in the wilderness for years with other escapees. They formed armed groups to defend themselves against military patrols, border guards, and other desperate people. You formed military units? Mordak asked. We formed groups to survive. Sometimes that meant fighting. How often? Often enough. Mordak was getting frustrated. His scales rippled with darker colors. I need specific numbers. How many soldiers did you kill? How many border guards? How many other humans? Deho's face hardened. Why? Because I need to verify your claims. No. Why do you need to know exactly who died and how they died? What difference does it make to your investigation? It proves whether humans are naturally violent or naturally deceptive. What? If we are neither? Mordak stopped pacing. Explain. What if we are naturally desperate? In the observation room, Agent Yoon leaned forward. He's trying to explain something they can't understand, Daeho continued. Your species, all the council species, you fight for territory or resources or honor. You have warrior castes and military traditions and codes of combat. You choose to fight. And humans do not? Humans fight to survive. We fight because if we do not fight, we die. Not honorably in battle, but slowly from hunger or cold or disease. We fight because fighting is better than the alternative. Mordak's machines were beeping constantly now. His assistants looked scared. You are saying your species fights out, of desperation, not aggression? I am saying that when you have no choice, you do whatever it takes to stay alive. And humans have not had many choices throughout our history. Professor Kang activated the speakers again. Inquisitor, I have Earth's historical records here. Would you like to see what no choice looks like for humans? Show me. The room's main screen lit up with images and data from Earth's past. Wars that lasted decades, famines that killed millions, plagues that wiped out entire civilizations, natural disasters that destroyed whole continents. This is just the last 1,000 years, Professor Kang explained. Before that, it was worse. Humans spent their entire evolutionary period fighting everything. Predators, climate, disease, starvation, and each other. We learned to fight because the ones who could not fight died. Mordak stared at the screen. His assistants were making notes frantically. Your species faced extinction repeatedly? Multiple times. And every time the humans who survived were the ones willing to do whatever it took to keep living. Mordak turned back to Daeho. And you are one of these survivors? We are all survivors. Some of us just had to survive more than others. The investigation continued for hours. Mordak asked about specific battles, specific kills, specific moments, when Daeho chose to take a life instead of losing his own. With each answer, the machines beeped more urgently. With each story, Mordak's assistants looked more worried. Finally, as the station's artificial evening began, Mordak called for a break. I will compile my initial report tonight, he told Bo-Ram. But I must warn you, if this human is telling the truth, then everything the Council believes about humans is wrong. What do you believe about us? Mordak's yellow eyes looked tired. We believed you were a young, weak species that barely deserved Council membership. We believed you were peaceful because you were not capable of real violence. And now? Now, I believe you are peaceful because you choose to be peaceful, and that makes you far more dangerous than any warrior species in the galaxy. That night, Agent Yoon found Daeho in the station's small observation lounge. He was sitting by the window, looking out at the stars. How are you holding up? She asked. I am fine. Are you? That was a pretty intense questioning. Daeho was quiet for a moment. I have been questioned before, by people much less polite than Mordak. What do you think will happen? I think they will decide that humans are too dangerous to trust, or too dangerous to leave alone. Either way, it will not end well. Agent Yoon sat down next to him. Why? Did you tell the truth? You could have lied about the numbers. I tried lying once. It did not help anyone. When? When I was 19, border guards caught 3 of us trying to cross into China. They asked if we had killed anyone. I said no. They shot the other 2 anyway to set an example. Then they let me go because I was just a refugee kid who had never hurt anyone. But you had hurt people. Many people. 3 days after the interrogation, ships began arriving from all over the galaxy. Big ships, small ships, military vessels, and diplomatic cruisers. The news about Earth's census data had spread through the Council worlds like fire through dry grass. Ambassador Bo-Ram stood in the main docking bay, watching yet another alien delegation emerge from their transport. These were Velthari, ancient warriors, who had been fighting battles since before humans learned to make fire. How many delegations is that now? Asked Captain Nam. 17, Bo-Ram replied. And more coming every hour. The leader of the Velthari delegation was Supreme Commander Velthar, He was old even by alien standards, with scars covering his gray skin and eyes that had seen more battles than most species fought in their entire history. "Ambassador Park," his voice was like grinding stone, "I have come to meet this human warrior who claims numbers higher than mine." "He's not a warrior. He's a janitor." Velthar's 3 eyes focused on her with sharp attention. "I have killed in 437 battles across 6 different wars. I have personally ended 789 enemy lives. This janitor claims over 1,000. If he is not lying, then he is the greatest warrior I have never heard of." Boram felt tired. "He's not lying. He's been verified by 3 different alien truth detection systems. Then I must understand how this is possible." They found Deho in the lower maintenance areas, repairing an air filtration unit. He worked with the same quiet focus he brought to everything, as if the mechanical problems of the station were the most important things in the universe. "Deho!" Boram called. "Someone wants to meet you!" Deho looked up and saw Velthar. The alien was huge, armored, and carried weapons that had been blessed by his people's war gods. Deho looked back at his repair work. "I am busy," he said. Velthar made a sound that might have been laughter. "He dismisses me? A supreme commander of the Velthari Empire?" "He dismisses everyone," Boram explained. "He doesn't like attention." I'm not here for social purposes. I am here to understand how a maintenance worker has killed more enemies than the greatest warriors of my people." Deho set down his tools and wiped his hands on a rag. "You want to compare scars? I want to compare experience." "Fine." Deho stood up. He was still much smaller than Velthar, but somehow he did not look small. "You said you fought in 400 battles?" 437. "Over how many years?" 600 years. My species lives longer than yours." Deho nodded. "So about 1 battle every year and a half, with time to rest, train, and prepare between each fight." "Yes. I fought every day for 12 years. No rest, no preparation time, no choosing when and where to fight." The emergency session of the Galactic Council began at dawn. Representatives from every major species filled the great chamber that orbited the galaxy's center. For the first time in Council history, the debate was not about trade routes or territorial disputes. It was about survival. Fleet Admiral Oh Dong-wook sat at the human delegation table, flanked by Ambassador Boram and General Choi. Behind them, in a place of honor, sat Kim Deho, the quiet janitor who had started this crisis by simply telling the truth. High Arbiter Vexral called for order, his crystal body pulsing with nervous energy. "We are here to address the human question. Elder Council Mintar Gotha will explain why humanity's military capabilities are relevant to galactic security." The ancient hive mind entity materialized as a shimmering cloud of light and consciousness. When it spoke, its voice carried the weight of 1 billion years. 47,000 years ago, our long-range sensors detected something approaching from outside the galaxy. A force that consumes entire star systems, leaving nothing but empty space. We calculated its arrival time at approximately 50 standard years from now. The chamber erupted in panic. Species that had been arguing about humans suddenly found themselves facing extinction. Empress Zith Ara of the militant hegemony rose from her seat. Why was this information kept secret? Because there was nothing any species could do about it. Until now. Explain. Elder Tergotha's consciousness focused on the human delegation. Every species in the galaxy developed under similar conditions. Stable climates, abundant resources, predictable challenges. When faced with insurmountable problems, they adapted by accepting limitations. And humans? Humans developed under constant threat of extinction. When faced with insurmountable problems, they adapted by refusing to accept limitations. Admiral O stood up slowly. "You're saying you need us to fight something that can't be fought? We need you to do what your species has always done, find a way to survive the impossible." Peacekeeper Neil Vaughn, representative of the Pacifist Alliance, made sounds of distress. "But humans are violent. How can violence solve this problem?" Deho stood up quietly. All eyes in the chamber turned to him. The small man who had cleaned floors and counted his kills looked out at the gathered representatives of galactic civilization. "May I speak?" he asked. Admiral O nodded. Go ahead. Daeho's voice was calm and clear in the vast chamber. You think, we are violent. You are wrong. We are survivors. What is the difference? Demanded Empress Zithara. Violent species fight because they enjoy fighting. Survivor species fight because the alternative is not existing. And which are humans? Daeho looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of creatures from a dozen different worlds. When I was 15, I killed 3 guards to escape a prison camp. Not because I wanted to kill them, but because staying in that camp meant dying slowly. The chamber was completely silent. When I was 23, I killed a border patrol captain who was about to execute a group of refugee children. Not because I hated him, but because those children deserved to live. Continue, said Elder Tergotha. When I was 32, I killed 17 pirates who attacked a research station with 43 civilians. Not because I enjoyed violence, but because protecting innocent people was more important than my own safety. Daeho paused, looking down at his hands. Every person I killed, I remember their face. I remember their name if I knew it. I remember why they died and why I chose to live instead. Why do you remember? Asked Supreme Commander Velthar. Because forgetting would make their deaths meaningless. And if their deaths were meaningless, then I am just a murderer instead of a survivor. Inquisitor Mordak leaned forward. What does this have to do with the approaching threat? It means that when this enemy arrives, humans will not fight it because we want to. We will fight it because we refuse to let everything we love cease to exist. Elder Tergotha's ancient voice carried approval. This is why the quarantine protocols were established, not to protect the galaxy from human aggression, but to preserve human survival instincts until they were needed. You've been planning this for 10,000 years? Admiral O asked. We have been hoping that when the time came, humans would choose to fight for others instead of just themselves. Empress Zithara stood up aggressively. The hegemony demands control of human military forces. Our war leaders will direct their combat capabilities. No, Daeho said quietly. What did you say? I said no. Humans do not fight well under foreign command. We fight best when we choose our own leaders and our own methods. You dare refuse the hegemony? General Choi stood up with a grim smile. Empress, with respect, you've seen our records. How well did it work out for the last people who tried to force humans to do things they didn't want to do? Peacekeeper Nilvan made sounds of panic. This will lead to human domination of the galaxy. Elder Yu Minsik, who had been watching quietly, rose slowly from the observer section. May an old man speak? The chamber fell silent again. I am 82 years old. I have lived through 7 wars and 3 genocides. I have seen humans at their worst and their best. He looked around the chamber. You are afraid that humans will conquer you, but you misunderstand what humans want. What do humans want? Asked High Arbiter Vexral. We want to be left alone to live our lives in peace. But we have learned that sometimes, to have peace, you must be willing to fight for it. And if we give humans the military authority to fight this threat, Elder Yu smiled sadly. Then when the threat is defeated, humans will go back to their farms and their families and their quiet lives, because we have had enough of war. How can you be certain? Because that is what we did after every other war. Americans went home after World War II. Koreans went home after the Korean War. Colonists went home after the resource wars. Humans fight when they must. Then they stop fighting when they can. Daeho nodded. This is why I became a janitor. After 20 years of fighting to survive, I wanted to spend the rest of my life making things clean instead of making them broken. Admiral O addressed the chamber formally. Earth is willing to serve as the primary military force against this external threat, but we have conditions. State them, demanded Empress Zithara. First, human military commanders retain full tactical and strategic authority during combat operations. Second, all species contribute resources and support personnel. Third, when the threat is defeated, human forces return to Earth and the previous council structure is restored. And if we refuse these conditions? Admiral O's expression was cold. Then you can face the extinction-level threat with your own forces. We'll be on Earth, defending our own people. Elder Tergotha spoke again. The choice is clear. Trust humans to fight for the galaxy or watch the galaxy die. The debate continued for hours. Species argued, threatened, and pleaded. But, in the end, the mathematics were simple. An unstoppable force was approaching, and only one species had spent its entire evolutionary history learning to stop unstoppable forces. The vote was close, but it passed. Humanity would lead the galaxy's defense against the approaching threat. As the delegates dispersed, Daiho found himself standing alone in the great chamber. Admiral O approached him. "How do you feel about all this?" the Admiral asked. "Tired," Daiho said honestly. "You know what this means, don't you? You're not going to be able to go back to cleaning floors. Earth needs people like you to help train the new forces." Daiho was quiet for a long moment. "Admiral, can I ask you something?" "Of course." "When this is over, when we've fought this thing and won or lost, will there still be floors that need cleaning?" Admiral O smiled. "Yes, Daiho. There will always be floors that need cleaning." "Good. Because I would like to go back to making things clean instead of making them broken. What if we need you to fight again someday?" Daiho looked out at the stars visible through the chamber's transparent walls. Somewhere among those lights was an enemy that could destroy everything humans had ever built or loved. "Then I will fight. Again. Not because I want to, but because the alternative is letting everything we care about cease to exist." 3 months later, the New Horizons station had been converted into the galaxy's primary military coordination center. Ships from a dozen species came and went daily, carrying supplies and personnel for humanity's war effort. Daiho still cleaned the floors, but now he also trained alien warriors in human combat philosophy. His classes were simple and practical. "Fighting is not about being brave," he told a group of young Kethmori soldiers. "Fighting is about doing whatever it takes to protect what you love, even when you are terrified." "But how do we overcome fear?" asked one of them. "You don't overcome fear. You use it. Fear keeps you alive. Fear makes you careful. Fear reminds you what you are fighting for." After class, he returned to his quarters and found a message waiting from his sister on Earth. She had sent pictures of her grandchildren playing in a garden. Daiho looked at the pictures for a long time. Somewhere in the darkness between galaxies, an enemy was approaching that could destroy those children and everything they would ever build. He put the pictures in his pocket and went back to work. There were floors to clean and people to train, and preparations to make. Because when the enemy arrived, humans would be ready to do what they had always done.